When you stop chasing her, the story doesn't end. It begins. Not with words or closure, but with a silence so heavy it rewrites the air between you. What feels like calm on your side is chaos on hers. Behind the posts, the laughter, the carefully crafted indifference, something deeper starts to stir. Doubt. And doubt is far more powerful than distance. For a woman who's always drawn strength from being desired, your withdrawal isn't absence, it's disruption. It breaks the pattern. It questions the story she's told herself about her power, her worth, her place in your life. Because if you no longer need her to stay, then maybe she was never the center of gravity after all. The irony is that she'll never say any of this. She'll pretend nothing's changed. But inside, questions multiply. Why isn't he reaching out? Has he moved on? What does my silence mean now if it doesn't move him? And with every question left unanswered, your presence grows heavier in her mind. Not because you're chasing, but because you're not. This isn't a tactic, it's a turning point. Your silence isn't punishment. It's proof that your worth was never defined by her validation. And once that truth lands, the balance begins to shift. Like this video and subscribe to Stoic Station, where silence becomes strength and discipline becomes power. Start this journey now. Drop a 1 if you're done chasing validation, or a 2 if you're ready to master stillness. Because what comes next isn't just a shift in how she sees you. It's a shift in how you see yourself. And it all begins here, in the first fracture of the facade. Let's dive in. Step 1. The mask starts to crack. When you stop chasing her, something powerful and unexpected begins to stir beneath the surface. A subtle yet seismic shift that most men never see coming. The silence that once felt like a wall between you doesn't stand so firm anymore. It trembles, and beneath the polished confidence she's worn like armor, small fractures begin to form, revealing the truth that's always been there. Her silence was never strength. It was a performance held together by your pursuit. Here's where many men go wrong. They look at her distance and assume it's proof she's moved on. They believe her silence means they didn't matter. That belief leads to panic. They rush back in, desperate to end their own discomfort, chasing once again to quiet the fear that maybe they were never enough. But the truth is far deeper. What you're witnessing isn't her power at all. It's the first sign that it's slipping. For years, her sense of self has been built, brick by brick, on male attention. Every glance, every message, every ounce of pursuit has written the same story in her mind. I am desired. I am wanted. I am in control. It wasn't arrogance, it was reinforcement. It was the feedback loop that shaped her confidence and kept her identity intact. And as long as men kept playing their role, the illusion remained unshaken. But the moment you step out of that script, the mirror she's relied on to see herself begins to crack. Your indifference is not neutral, it's a verdict. And the question that cuts deeper than any breakup starts to whisper in her mind. What does my silence mean now if it no longer moves him? That single thought is more disruptive than any argument you could start, because it forces her to confront a possibility she's never considered, that her power may not be as absolute as she believed. This isn't just a loss of attention, it's an identity crisis. A woman who has always been the flame now stares into the unsettling reality that the moth isn't coming. And if the moth no longer circles the light, maybe the flame isn't as bright as she thought. That realization unsettles her in ways she'll never admit, and that's precisely where your strength becomes undeniable. This is why your discipline matters more than anything right now. The silence you hold isn't rejection, it's reclamation. It's you stepping out of the old story and writing a new one, where your worth isn't measured by her reaction. When you stop responding to her silence, you stop being controlled by it. You stop letting her behavior dictate your identity. And with that decision, the balance of power begins to shift back into your hands. Never forget this. The real power shift doesn't begin when she loses you. It begins the moment you stop losing yourself in the chase. Self-control will always be more attractive, more magnetic, and more unshakable than any pursuit could ever be. Write this down. A man who commands himself commands the story. But this is only the first ripple in a much larger wave, because when the mask starts to crack, curiosity rushes in to fill the void, and that's when the real transformation begins. Step 2. Curiosity replaces control. You might think she's gone, that the silence means her chapter in your story has ended, but if you look closer, you'll see the truth hiding in plain sight. She hasn't disappeared. She's watching, and the more you withdraw, the harder it becomes for her to look away. What once felt like distance is no longer detachment, it's observation. And that subtle shift is where the balance of power quietly begins to turn. This is where most men make their biggest mistake. They assume that silence equals indifference, that her lack of contact is proof she's moved on. But silence is rarely an ending. More often, it's the space before a new dynamic takes shape, the moment when action transforms into analysis. She's no longer playing the active role, pulling you in with words or gestures. Instead, she's stepped back to study you, to understand why her usual influence no longer works. When you stop playing the predictable part, when you no longer respond instantly, react emotionally, or validate her with attention, you become something unfamiliar. And that unfamiliarity is magnetic. Predictable men are easy to read, easy to control. But a man who no longer dances to the rhythm she sets becomes an unsolved mystery, and the human mind is wired to chase what it cannot fully understand. Now, every moment of your stillness becomes a signal for her to decode. She checks your online status and overanalyzes the timing. She scrolls through your posts, searching for hidden meanings. She notices who interacts with you when you're active, what you're doing, even the things you aren't doing. Every unanswered question fuels another. What's he thinking? Where is he? Has he really moved on? It's not the answers that pull her back. It's the uncertainty. And here's where curiosity evolves into something stronger: obsession. Because the one thing she cannot control is the unknown. And if she can't predict you, she can't command you. That realization gnaws at her, dismantling the story she's always believed, that she held the power to make men orbit. Now, she's the one orbiting you, unable to stop thinking, speculating, wondering. This is where most men sabotage their progress. The moment they notice her watching, they start performing again, posting to get her attention, replying to prove a point, subtly signaling that they still care. But every attempt to show her something gives her back the control she's losing. It reminds her that she still has influence. The real move? Do nothing. Stay grounded in your purpose. Keep building your life. The less you signal, the more she projects. The more she projects, the deeper her curiosity pulls her in. Mystery isn't about playing games. It's about living so fully in your own orbit that she's forced to question hers. Remember this truth: when you stop seeking her attention, she starts seeking your presence. And when curiosity takes root, it doesn't fade, it grows. Write this down. Silence without intention is empty, but silence with direction is power. And once curiosity grips her mind, it becomes your greatest ally. But it also awakens something darker, a rising tide of competition that will change everything. Step 3. The ghost of competition. Here's a hard truth most men overlook. When you stop chasing her, she doesn't imagine you're alone. She imagines you're with someone else. Her mind rarely entertains the idea that you might have simply chosen peace over chaos, growth over validation, or solitude over chasing. No, her ego demands a narrative that protects her pride, and that narrative is always the same. If you're not chasing her, you must be chasing someone else. This is where human psychology kicks in. The idea that you could walk away to focus on yourself doesn't sit comfortably with her self-image. It's far easier to believe that another woman has captured your attention than to accept that she no longer commands it. This is cognitive dissonance in its purest form. The painful gap between her long-held belief, "I'm irreplaceable," and the new reality, "he's gone." That gap must be bridged, and her mind will do whatever it takes to fill it. The bridge it builds is almost always the same story. There's someone new. And once that story takes root, it spreads quickly. Every small shift in your behavior becomes evidence. That late-night post, proof. That unfamiliar name who liked your picture, confirmation. Even the way you seem calmer, more focused, more distant, that too must be because someone else is giving you what she no longer can. The irony is that none of this has to be true. The mere possibility is enough to shake her. It haunts her in quiet moments, tugging at her thoughts when she least expects it. Has he replaced me? This imagined rivalry does more than unsettle her. It changes her behavior. That's why you'll notice the sudden shift in the way she presents herself. The selfies get bolder, the outfits more deliberate, the captions sharper. These aren't random acts of self-expression. They're calculated performances. She's not doing it to celebrate herself. She's doing it to outshine a woman who might not even exist. The competition is invisible, but in her mind it's real, and you are the prize she's determined to reclaim. But here's where many men lose the power they've gained. They see this sudden burst of activity and mistake it for genuine confidence or happiness. They misinterpret her show as proof that she's moved on, and they respond. They like the photo, they send a message, they re-enter the game. But the moment you do that, the illusion shatters. You validate the story she's telling herself. You confirm that she still has a hold on you. And just like that, the control you had begins to slip away. Your real power lies not in how you react, but in how you don't. The most powerful move you can make is to remain unbothered, not cold, not bitter, just deeply centered in your own life. Because the man who stays grounded in his purpose, who refuses to be baited into a performance, becomes something rare. He becomes selective. And that selectivity is the essence of scarcity, not the absence of presence, but the presence of choice. Write this down. The man who doesn't bite the bait becomes the prize. Your silence in the face of her performance is louder than any message you could send. And yet, this isn't the end of her attempts to pull you back. If phantom rivals don't make you flinch, she'll try something more subtle, a series of silent traps designed to test your resolve. And that's when the game truly begins. Step 4. The silent traps begin. Every delayed reply, every vague story, every sudden wave of coldness that seems to come out of nowhere, none of it is accidental. It's not coincidence, and it's not confusion. These are deliberate moves, small but strategic, designed to test you. They're traps disguised as silence. When a woman senses her influence slipping, she rarely confronts it directly. That would require vulnerability, an admission that the power dynamic has changed. Instead, she turns to something far more subtle, psychological testing. She wants to know if she still has the ability to provoke a reaction, to pull you out of your calm and back into orbit. She wants proof that she still matters enough to move you. And the easiest way to get that proof isn't with words. It's by manipulating the absence of them. This behavior is rooted in a psychological principle known as intermittent reinforcement. the same tactic that keeps gamblers hooked to slot machines. The unpredictability of a reward creates the strongest attachment. And so, she'll respond one day and vanish the next. She'll post a quote that feels directed at you, then go silent for a week. She'll suddenly act distant, colder than usual, leaving you to wonder what changed. And most men, trapped in the uncertainty, crack. They panic. They send the text. They try to fix the situation. They rush to fill the silence, and in doing so, they prove they're still under her influence. The moment you take the bait, the balance resets. All the power you built by walking away evaporates. She learns that she still controls the tempo, that she can still make you dance to the rhythm of her absence. And once she has that confirmation, the cycle repeats. It becomes a game, one she knows how to win because she's played it countless times before. But what happens when you don't react? What happens when the coldness doesn't shake you, when the vague posts don't bait you, when the sudden silence doesn't pull you out of your peace? That's when the dynamic changes completely, because in that moment, she's no longer testing you. She's testing herself. Every ignored trap forces her to question her own power. Every unanswered signal chips away at the certainty she once had. This is why your stillness matters more now than ever. See these tests for what they truly are. Not signs of disinterest, but desperate probes searching for evidence that she still holds sway over you. The real strength isn't in responding cleverly or playing games of your own. The real strength is in refusing to participate at all. Let your actions, or rather your inaction, become the loudest message you send. Live your life with such purpose and direction that her silence no longer dictates your next move. Because true power isn't found in passing the test. It's found in refusing to play the game entirely. When you stay grounded and unwavering, you show her something she isn't prepared to see. That her old tactics no longer work, that her silence no longer controls you, and that your peace can't be disturbed by her attempts to provoke. Remember this: the strongest response you can give is no reaction at all. When your silence becomes stronger than her manipulation, the entire dynamic flips, and the person who was once pulling the strings is suddenly the one grasping at them. And when silence no longer works as a weapon, a deeper fear begins to surface. The fear of losing control altogether. And that fear is far more powerful than any test she could ever design. Step 5. The fear of losing power. Her greatest fear has never been losing you. It's losing her ability to control how you feel. That's the truth most men miss. Love might have played a role, attraction might have sparked the connection, but underneath it all, power was always part of the equation. And nothing shakes a woman's sense of certainty more than realizing that the emotional levers she once pulled so effortlessly no longer work on you. For years, her influence over your inner world was her anchor. A delayed reply could throw you off balance. A strategically timed silence could make you question everything. A sudden, playful withdrawal could send you spiraling back into pursuit. These weren't random behaviors. They were signals, subtle but deliberate, designed to reassure her that she still mattered, that she still held the reins. And as long as you reacted, she had proof. As long as your mood shifted with her actions, her control remained intact. But something changes when you detach. Suddenly, those levers stop working. The delayed reply no longer stings. The silence no longer shakes you. The withdrawal no longer pulls you back in. Your peace no longer depends on her presence, and your emotional stability no longer rises and falls with her attention. And that shift, that calm steadiness, terrifies her far more than any goodbye ever could. This is where loss aversion hits with full force. Human beings fear losing control far more than they value gaining it. and that instinct is magnified when the control once felt absolute. As her ability to shape your behavior fades, panic creeps in beneath the surface. She might still post as if nothing has changed. She might act like she's unbothered, even indifferent. But behind that composed exterior, she's checking her phone more often. She's replaying conversations in her head, wondering where the switch flipped. She's refreshing the chat, waiting for a message that never comes. Imagine building your entire sense of value on your ability to influence someone, only to realize that power is gone. That's the silent storm raging inside her now. It isn't heartbreak, it's helplessness. And helplessness is far more unsettling because it forces her to confront a reality she never prepared for. She's no longer the center of your emotional universe. This is the critical point where many men falter. They sense her subtle panic and mistake it for vulnerability. They rush back in to reassure her, to fix the situation, to offer comfort. But every attempt to soothe her fear hands the control right back to her. It tells her she still holds sway over your emotions, that she can still dictate the tempo of the connection. And once again, the power dynamic resets, back to where it started. Your role now is not to rescue her from that feeling. Your job is to hold steady, to let silence speak louder than any reassurance ever could. Because when she sees that nothing she does, no silence, no delay, no performance, can shake you, something profound happens. The power dynamic doesn't just shift, it collapses. And in its place, a new kind of respect begins to form, the kind reserved for a man who cannot be controlled. Remember this truth. Peace is power, and it becomes yours the moment you stop giving it away. The man who commands his own emotions commands the entire relationship. And when she realizes that her old tricks have lost their hold, she's forced into the final stage, the one she spent her entire life avoiding, because once control is gone, there's only one place left for her to look, inward. And that's where the deepest transformation begins. Step 6. The mirror turns inward. When your silence holds long enough, the spotlight that once shined so brightly on you begins to shift. The questions that once revolved around your choices now orbit hers. She stops asking, "Why hasn't he called?" and starts asking, "What does this say about me?" It's a subtle shift at first, almost invisible, but over time it grows into a storm that she can't silence. Because now, for the first time, the scrutiny isn't directed outward, it's turned inward. For years, validation was her constant companion. Compliments, messages, attention, they were the steady rhythm of reassurance that told her she was beautiful, desired, and above all, significant. They were the external proof that her presence alone was enough to command pursuit. But when that validation disappears, when the applause suddenly stops, the silence becomes deafening. And in that silence, doubt finds room to breathe. She starts to replay everything, every word she said, every choice she made, every subtle moment that once seemed insignificant. Did I misread him? Did I push too far? Did I lose my edge? These questions swirl in her mind as the narrative she's built, the one where she was always the exception, collides with a more uncomfortable possibility. Maybe she wasn't. Maybe she's not as unforgettable as she believed. Maybe her charm, her beauty, and her presence weren't enough to hold you. And that's where the real battle begins. Not between you and her, but between her and the reflections staring back at her. Because this isn't about you anymore. It's about what your silence says about her. If all the traits she thought made her irreplaceable couldn't keep you, what does that mean for her sense of worth? That question doesn't just bruise the ego, it rewrites identity, and once that rewriting begins, it's almost impossible to stop. Outwardly, she might still project confidence. The photos, the captions, the laughter, all of it carefully curated to convince the world and herself that she's thriving. But behind closed doors, the questions don't stop. They echo in the quiet moments when the noise fades and there's no one left to perform for. Why wasn't I enough? What did he see or not see in me? That single question, why wasn't I enough, becomes the shadow that follows her everywhere. This is the part of the process you must not interrupt. As tempting as it may be to step back in, to soothe her doubts, to offer reassurance, doing so would rob both of you of the lesson that needs to unfold. Your silence is not cruelty, it's clarity. It forces a confrontation with the truth. That attention is not the same as value, and that love isn't measured by how desperately someone chases. It teaches her that her worth must come from within, and it teaches you that your peace is not dependent on someone else's recognition. The man who can hold his silence without breaking has already won the most important battle, the one within himself, because he's proven that he no longer needs to be validated to feel valuable. He no longer needs to be chosen to know his worth, and in doing so, he becomes something far more powerful than desired. He becomes sovereign. Write this down. The real victory isn't found in her regret. It's found in your sovereignty, in the quiet, unshakable confidence that remains even when the applause is gone. And once that sovereignty is established, the final shift begins. One that doesn't just change how she sees you, but how you see yourself. And that's when everything changes. Step 7. The final shift. Freedom over validation. In the end, your silence was never meant to be a weapon. It was never about punishing her, proving a point or playing a game. It was a mirror, one that reflected not just her illusions, but yours. Because this story was never truly about her power, her control, or her ability to command pursuit. It was always about you, about the man you become when you stop needing to be chosen and start choosing yourself. Each stage of this journey forced both of you to confront uncomfortable truths. For her, it was the illusion of control, the comfort of being desired, the belief that she would always be the center of gravity. But more importantly, for you, it was the deeper internal struggle, the need for validation, the fear of rejection, the compulsion to chase. These weren't weaknesses, they were habits, ones you probably didn't even realize were shaping your behavior. But silence breaks habits, and with every day you held the line, you weren't just reclaiming power, you were rewriting the story of who you are. The paradox is striking. The less you need her attention, the more powerful you become in her eyes. The moment you stop orbiting around her approval, the more magnetic your presence feels. Yet the real victory isn't that she regrets losing you. It's that you no longer require her to define your worth. Because a man who is centered in himself doesn't rise and fall with someone else's recognition. He stands firm because his value is self-sustained. This is where most men spend their entire lives trapped, chasing validation, begging to be seen, believing that worth is something given rather than something owned. But true freedom doesn't come from being chosen. It comes from choosing yourself. It's in the decision to stop leaking energy into someone else's orbit and instead gather it back into your own. And once you make that shift, everything around you recalibrates. Silence, then, is not the end of the story, it's the rewriting of it. And this time, you're not the one revolving. You are the center. You are the gravity that everything else begins to move around. You are no longer a reaction to her choices. You are the architect of your own direction. The man who no longer folds under silence isn't just stronger. He's untouchable. His life doesn't pause for anyone's attention. His peace isn't negotiable, and his worth is no longer up for debate. Remember this, peace isn't found in being wanted. it's found in being whole. Stopping the chase doesn't punish her, it purifies you. It ends the drain of your energy and anchors it where it belongs, under your own command. She may wobble, she may watch, she may invent rivals, set traps, fear losing control, or question her worth. But the story has never been about her reactions. It has always been about your mastery. The less you need her attention, the more undeniable your presence becomes. If you're a man in your 30s or 40s who's tired of running on emotional autopilot, this is the lesson. Let your silence be a standard, not a stunt. Choose discipline over reaction. Choose sovereignty over validation. Because when a man can stand still without folding, the world around him has no choice but to adjust. And that, the unshakable peace born from self-mastery, is the silent power shift no one can ever take from you. If this message grounded you, pause for a moment. Like this video and subscribe to Stoic Station, where silence becomes strength and doubt transforms into discipline. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below. I choose myself. Because in the end, that's the shift that matters most. Not whether she comes back, but whether you stand unshaken.